Today, I'm gonna be explaining a very important article, which is Memory Augmented Graph Neural Networks, a brain-inspired perspective. This article was written in 2023. We provide a comprehensive review of existing literature on memory-augmented graph neural networks. We review these works through the lens of psychology and neuroscience, which has several established theories on how multiple memory systems and mechanisms operate in biological brains. We propose a taxonomy of memory-augmented graph neural networks and set of criteria for comparing their memory mechanisms. We have different forms of memory in graph neural networks. You are familiar with internal memory. We have a kind of key value memory, which is, for example, keys, queries, and values are, it from transformer architecture. And graph neural networks, you can consider it, and you can consider transformer as a kind of GNN. Another kind of memory is globally connected. For example, we have one node and everything is related to that. We have a different node, everything else is related to that. And we have external memory. For example, the work of Alan Turing or their next version in DeepMind, which is differentiable computers, they are based on external memory system. You read and write to that. You erase it and add it, those mechanisms in the write. And the read is like a soft attention over different memories that I've explained in the previous lectures. But we have gated neural networks as well. For example, this is the way it is updated based on the previous layer for each node. For each node V, we look at the neighbors of that and we update it. There are different memory systems. Short-term memory, for example, your working memory in your brain. I've written a lot of articles on my Medium about prefrontal cortex, as well as your hippocampus, which is very important. Working memory, it is implemented in your brain, in your prefrontal cortex. And we have three parts in your prefrontal cortex. And the middle, the top of your brain, it is working memory. It produces, it's like a short-term memory that you remember things. And prefrontal cortex is like integrator of everything, every region in your brain that are interconnected. So this is interesting. And the long-term memory, you have episodic memory, and then you have semantic memory. It's like knowledge base, like atomic or different knowledge graphs. And for implicit, you have motor control. And so brain systems, you can draw inspiration from these brain systems and use it for graph neural networks. We have different stages of memory. For example, this side, figure 3C, depicts the brain system thought to be involved in complementary learning systems, which facilitates the transfer of memory from short to long-term memory. The first learning system is largely thought to rely on synaptic plasticity in the hippocampus, these red arrows here. And the slow system relies on cortical plasticity. These green systems are slow systems. And we have system 1 and system 2 in artificial intelligence, so you understand what I say. While the theories illustrated in Figure 3 build on a molecular and cellular understanding of memory, their main focus is to define cognitive module for neural systems. So in your brain, you don't have a single graph neural networks. You have a graph neural networks here, GNN here, another GNN here, and by some nodes, they are connected to each other. Another GNN here. And so I always think about it as a stochastic block model if you're familiar with network graph theory and random graphs especially. You understand that. So deep learning is going to, in future, I guess, use random. You initialize weights randomly, and your nonlinear dynamics comes from a reservoir. And this reservoir computing, I will explain reservoir computing in a different playlist. Another key advance was made in understanding the different stages of the memory regardless of its duration. The stages include one, encoding, and second, maintenance or consolidation and retrieval. So maintenance or consolidation and retrieval, it is widely understood that some active selection mechanism determines what content is preceded in each stage of memory. This selection is necessary because memory capacity is limited. Just like Hopfield network that I proved that you have the number of patterns that you can store in that is just 1.14 number of neurons. Here is again, but in this formulation, which is artificial, it is limited. But in your brain, I can prove that it is almost infinite. But we don't use that. So we describe graph neural networks above as a generalized model form that can maintain invariance over space or time depending on what is represented by the nodes and the edges in the graph. Similarly, memory augmented graph neural networks can store information about space, time, or both space and time. We define space as distance in the graph. So if you like these things, you can watch my playlist for metric embedding. And there I explained how you can embed what we mean by metric embedding. Memory graph neural networks which operate over space are storing information about graph structure and memory to enable non-local processing or to learn particular structures such as hierarchies. Memory graph neural networks which operate over time, such as recurrent graph neural networks, are enabling history-dependent processing. For example, you can write an article in a journal and your idea could be use reservoir computing, combine reservoir computing with graph neural networks. And then it becomes a great article if you work on that. So there are many research areas that I don't have time to write hundreds of articles, because any combination of these paradigms is a nice idea that can be a breakthrough in deep learning. We should be courageous. We should change the paradigm. Why should we follow, for example, if somebody uses variation autoencoders and you see millions of articles about variation autoencoder with the same concept, with the same formula, even with the same idea. So if we become courageous, then we can have new paradigms, because we have infinite number of paradigms that we can invent. But our paradigms should have a good properties and outperform the previous ideas and algorithms. So there are different form and scope of memory graph neural networks for different problems and applications. Some of them are key value store, as I explained. Some of them are just internal. Some of them are global information. One node we connected to a network, and some of them are external, like neural Turing machine. So you have different combination of paradigms, different ideas that we can work with memory. So all memory modules require a write mechanism which determines what information is stored or encoded in memory. In most cases, the neural network architecture has a rule which determines what is stored in memory. In regimes where memory capacity is limited, a selective write mechanism ensures that only relevant and useful information is stored for later processing. This is in line with cognitive neuroscience account of how and why attention interacts with human memory encoding. For example, attention in your memory, in your brain, is inside your prefrontal cortex. And it interacts with human memory encoding. For example, if you have different memories, for example, associative memory is implemented in your hippocampus. Of course, hippocampus has many roles. For example, cognitive mapping that you use for example, to understand where you are, where you should move, the map of the system, the map of the place that you are walking in, like a rat that knows verities and understands those things, and the concept of place cells and those things in neuroscience. Hippocampus has many roles. And attention, as I said, is in prefrontal cortex. So all of these attention mechanisms that, for example, like the attention mechanism of Yoshua Bengio or even transformer architecture, the mechanism of that, all of them are in prefrontal cortex that integrates several regions of your brain. It's like a controller, connects feeling, emotion, different sensories, and combines them, and that's why it works in higher order cognitive understanding, and it does reasoning as well. It also does your prefrontal cortex. It also does decision making. For example, it understands which option has which value. It's like computing the reward for different options. So it's like reinforcement learning. So its brain is like a miracle. Somebody has designed that. We have three methods. Caching is faster than your RAM, and CPU is faster than all of them. But that paradigm of one Neumann architecture is old. Now you're in the world of neuromorphic computing and reservoir computing, and those things that everything is naturally implemented by neural networks, like attractor networks, like Hopfield networks and those things. But Hopfield networks, we always talk about the stability of fixed points. It's very static. But if you generalize it by reservoir computing, is very beautiful because it's like dynamic thing. Not only to talk about fixed point, but also to talk about dynamics. And most of the time, the dynamic is chaotic. And so memory retrieval, we can use similarity-based retrieval or other retrieval mechanisms. And memory capacity, as I said, for Hopfield networks, it's 1.4 number of neurons is the number of patterns that you can store. But here in graph neural network, you should compute it. But since our graph neural networks is naive because everything is synchronous, so we just skip that.